Picture this. You're not just fixing cars, you're living your passion every day. At Cox, you'll work on a diverse range of automobiles. Surrounded by a team of friendly, like-minded individuals, you'll enjoy great pay and benefits. Ready to make this a reality? At Cox, we're recruiting auto and diesel techs to join our Mannheim and Fleet Services teams. Learn, grow, and fine-tune your career as a technician at Cox. Find out more at cox.careers/autotech.
My name is Adon Bean, and I am a spoken word poet. I think as I've gotten older and I've started to see fellow artists who have found themselves in need of vital organs, ultimately that is the way that evolved my thinking around this idea of organ donation. I get to continue to tell the story for others, be a little bit of ink in their pen.
When you become an organ and tissue donor, your story continues. Lifelink. Register today at mystorycontinues.com.
Before we begin, I want to let you know that this series features themes of violence, school shootings, and systemic racism. Please be advised. Previously, on Violence Week. A post-pandemic rise in violence and the discovery of a gun at East Lansing High School raised challenging questions about the role of policing in schools.
What we have is a crisis of common sense.
Restorative justice does not work. You continue to put my child's life in danger.
The police don't even care about coming out here because of the attitude of the school board, who doesn't give a shit.
I'm Emily Reeves, and this is Violence Week. Chapter 4, Back to School. By the next school board meeting on February 27th, 2 weeks after the shooting at MSU, the fights between the two groups of boys at the high school had calmed down. A group of their parents spoke up at that meeting.
It isn't lost on us that as a board, you all work to hire a security firm faster than you all work to partner with parents who ask for help.
That's Cherie Brooks, one of those parents. She wanted the school board to know that it wasn't the increased hallway monitoring or new policies on locked doors that caused the fights to stop. It was community intervention.
We were able to partner with the community resource, the Village, who then brought all the boys together to provide some conflict resolution. That's Monday to Friday. That's all it took. We went out to dinner. At the end of the dinner, the boys were singing karaoke. You guys had them up here fighting and bringing guns. So when you all say that you put these changes in place that has effectively, reduced incidents inside the building, our children took accountability for themselves.
Amen.
The co-founders of the Village, the organization that led the conflict resolution, were also at that meeting. They read out a letter they had sent weeks before the discovery of the gun, warning the school about the conflict and asking to work together on a solution.
One thing that I thought was really important is that I never received anything back from that situation. But the young man did go back to school.
Months later, I met up with Michael and Erica Lynn, the co-founders of the Village, at their Lansing-based podcast studio to hear about their work.
The reason why I got involved as a black man is because anytime that I see black young people being othered and saying it's them, that's going to bring me to the table.
When you start seeing the narrative that's taken shape of that it's those kids or it's the school of choice kids, it's the kids that live in Lansing, those are the black kids, period. That's it. They just wouldn't name that. We come into that space to name that.
Although the two cities geographically bleed into each other, East Lansing is really the college town suburb of Lansing, the state's capital. Lansing's much bigger, and like most of America, has seen an increase in gun violence over the past few years.
We talk about violence in this hushed tone in this really odd way. We take the DARE approach. Don't talk about it, don't teach about it, just don't do it. Violence is never the answer. That is simply untrue. Violence absolutely is an answer. It may not be the best answer, it may not be the most positive answer, but it is absolutely an answer. You have to understand where somebody's mind is at, what they're thinking, and how they're feeling. And we just don't think about that. We just think punish them or they need to stop.
Well, we do.
I know, other
others
people.
Don't.
Yes,
and
others
that's why
don't.
we always seem so radical, because we are listening to what they're saying. One person gets a gun, everybody feels they need to have one. So they're scared. I truly, from my conversation with them, they're nervous, they're scared, they don't know what to do.
Michael and Erica founded the Village in response to Lansing's growing crisis. Their philosophy revolves around the need for radical solutions, and they take a unique harm reduction approach, teaching things like gun safety and stop the bleed techniques. What they do is controversial, especially their program that helps get illegally armed community members their license to carry.
You know, it sounds crazy to some people. Some people can't even wrap their minds around it. But at the end of the day, we're not going to just tell you to avoid behaviors because we understand it's not effective and it's not realistic. We're going to equip you with a whole bunch of tools and resources, but we're also going to create an incentive because if you now are legal and you feel protected, that's an incentive to be able to remain protected and remain legal. Those are all factors that play into harm reduction.
And that's something with gun violence that people have a hard time wrapping their mind around because they just want the guns gone and away. A harm reduction mindset would be not telling them to put their guns away because they're already in an act of war. And so I have to walk back a little bit, like, let's just not have a shooting tomorrow. That's harm reduction. And I'm talking about serious cases because the East Lansing thing was really minor compared to what we deal with on a usual basis.
Beyond their normal programming, the Village facilitates conflict resolution sessions, just like they did with the boys at East Lansing. The goal is to stop shootings before they happen. And while it may sound similar to the restorative justice sessions that have gotten popular in schools, Michael and Erica believe that what they do isn't possible in a school setting.
Not being their parents, not being a teacher, not being in the schools or whatever the case may be is our superpower.
And with East Lansing, that was our superpower to dig into what was going on out there. As they came to me in my space, I have no stake in this other than making sure y'all are safe. I'm not going to ground you. I'm not going to punish you. You can cuss, not because I want you to, but because I'm not going to make that the focus right now. The focus is what's going on. I put the parents in one room and I took all of them to another room and I got the truth. And once they felt comfortable, they poured it all out. It was the easiest group I ever worked with, honestly.
The Village first got involved when a parent reached out to Michael. First, he met with one side of the two groups that were fighting and heard their perspective. He got the names of the other group, tracked them down, and met with them. And finally, he assembled everyone together in one room for conflict resolution.
And we just let them get it out. You know, what's the problems? What y'all got problems with? And they went back and forth. And then we just asked them to kind of oath to each other and us that they would not fight in the school no more. You're not going to fight. And then I had to let them know, like, there's a whole conversation about y'all being black and, like, y'all being in this school that's predominantly white, right? Or I should say not predominantly white, because it's, like, one of the most diverse schools. But there's only so many of y'all young black men walking the hallways. And unfortunately, in the times we're talking about right now, all the violence is coming from y'all. So this whole school, the school district, the parents, and everybody's looking at you guys like you're the problem, and that's attaching to the blackness of yourself, too. Why don't y'all celebrate each other being black? Y'all in a fraternity out in East Lansing. And they started to really catch that, like, man, you right. I do feel like alone in that school a lot.
And to Michael and Erica, what happened at East Lansing High reflected difficult realities about the two cities.
When I started to really touch base with the kids that had been expelled and suspended, a lot of them kids were from Lansing. And so I was like, dang, y'all ain't set up to deal with these kids. You want this diversity in this school, but you're not set up to deal with it. So as soon as they do something that's native to where they're from, then it's like, get them out of here. I went through this as a kid going to pretty much predominantly white school. And so I understood how that felt to have like, y'all want this diversity, but when I bring like my Lansing problems out here to this school, you don't have anything in place to fix that or deal with it. And I'm talking about, when I say Lansing problems, I don't mean like bad, black kid behavior. I mean like the fact that I have to get to school maybe a little late because I'm driving all the way, riding the bus all the way here, or I came to school and I'm tired, right? So then you have a teacher like, well, why can't you stay awake, and send you to the office, but they don't understand what your house is like or what it took for you to get to school. If a kid comes into your school, they have done probably a lot to get there. I mean, there's a lot, we're stricken by poverty in Lansing. East Lansing doesn't have that poverty issue. So there's a lot of poverty problems here that aren't necessarily black issues, but they bring them out to that school and East Lansing doesn't know how to deal with it.
By the time Michael and Erica showed up to that board meeting in late February, the beef had been squashed. Yet everyone there was still debating school shootings and policing.
I can't speak on this without bringing up racism and just plainly that even though those kids had stopped fighting, the people in that school, and I'm just going to say plainly, non-people of color in that school, administrators alike, and even some people of color are terrified of those kids. So we need police in here to protect us from them kids. That's what we kept saying. The police don't make those kids feel safe. Is police in the school going to make their life easier? Is it going to make it better? Is it going to make the beef stop? No. So I think that race is always a problem and an issue, and that's one thing we had to bring to the attention to East Lansing because they think they're better than that. Like, we're diverse and, like, we're doing all these great things. But again, who are you talking to? Like, who's telling you what you're doing is working? Because you guys are talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all these improvements and different things, and you haven't even heard about what the issue is with these kids.
Again, we have these conversations so often about the school to prison pipeline, but then when we got scared because a gun was seen, how quickly we're able to make that jump to police in schools and criminalizing young people and creating a school to prison pipeline.
It takes a lot of work and experimentation to make meaningful change, to solve big issues like gun violence, or pivot our society away from our long-held belief that punishment works.
When kids are leaving our schools, they are going into society. What do we want to teach them?
This is Dr. Tara Chambers, a professor of education at Michigan State, and, after the previous president resigned in the aftermath of the gun, the president of the school board.
I am much more interested in teaching kids, when you make a mistake, this is how you fix it. When you face a challenge, this is how you overcome it. I think those are the kinds of people we want as part of our society. I don't think we want to train kids how to be good prisoners. I don't think we want to have them be focused on, here are your consequences, and you deal with punishment. Is that appropriate in some cases? Of course. And we have those traditional disciplinary measures when they're appropriate. But the vast majority of the kinds of disciplinary actions that kids encounter in schools leave an opportunity for restorative practices, leave an opportunity for kids to learn and grow.
While some in the community blame the fighting on what they saw as lenient disciplinary policies, and others have critiqued the district for overly reactionary responses to the violence, Dr. Chambers insists that the school's commitment to restorative practices hasn't been shaken. Like so many parts of this story, this tension reflects a broader debate. Many critics have pointed to rising violence and classroom misbehavior as proof that restorative justice is ineffective.
Implementing any kind of new policy or program, the key word is what I just said, implementation. A lot of times people are like, oh, we tried XYZ thing, it didn't work. And so that XYZ program, practice, policy is ineffective. And sometimes that's true. Like, we have all seen all kinds of things come into fashion, out of fashion. More often, though, it's like, was that thing implemented with fidelity, with intentionality, with authenticity? And a lot of times it is not. And that's because, there is an administrator who's like, hey, I read this really cool thing that we should try. And here's the information, ready, we're going to start it on Monday, go. And we haven't provided the right resources. We haven't provided the right training. We haven't, created the opportunity for it to be successful. And restorative justice is definitely in that category because there are a lot of ways that it can go wrong. And a lot of people who say they do restorative justice when they don't, or they do something similar, or, they're doing, I don't know what they're doing, but it's not true restorative justice. We have worked in East Lansing to create a culture, I hope, where when we are doing something, we really take it seriously.
Restorative practices are just one piece of the culture that East Lansing is trying to build. A culture that centers relationships with students over punishment. This can be seen, for example, in a move they made a few years ago to stop hiring security guards and transition the role to what they now call student advocates. Instead of patrolling the hallways and maintaining order, the role is now centered on building connections with students. But the crisis in early 2023 halted these plans. After the discovery of the gun, security guards returned to the high school. I wanted to know if, in her decades of working in education, Dr. Chambers had seen the fear of gun violence change schools.
Underneath every conversation, underneath every public comment, underneath every, email that I receive around student safety is that fear. And it's a rational fear, I want to be able to say that that is not a rational fear, but it is rational in this country for kids to be afraid of that. I wish with all of my little heart that I could sit here and say that I could guarantee that our schools will be safe from gun violence. But that is not a guarantee that I can make as a school board member. That is terrifying to me. I feel like I am failing in my job to say that out loud, but also it is a reality, you know, and people want that sense of security. Like, I want to be able to tell people, like, your kids are safe in my district. I want to be able to say that, but I also recognize I can't make that guarantee. So I've got to do some extra work. And that is a place where I really do need our legislators to step up, right? To like work with me, help me.
In the wake of the shooting at MSU, Michigan actually did pass new gun legislation, a Herculean task in America. And the 2021 shooting at Oxford High School in suburban Detroit also inspired $25 million of additional state funding for SROs. In East Lansing, things eventually calmed down. School board meetings moved out of the auditorium and back into their original room, fit for the normal handful of attendees. In April, they had a school board meeting solely dedicated to the topic of school resource officers.
So to assume that a police officer is just here to put people in handcuffs and tase them and drag them out the door, I think is incredibly insulting to our law enforcement professionals.
The SRO issue, I fully understand the violence going on across this country with firearms and the danger they pose. But this topic didn't come up because of that. It came up because of some issues we had in the school. And I heard things like gangs, coded language there, and then asking for SROs. And so I do not support that.
As many minority students have experienced, it is not fair. They are taunted, they are followed, they are judged just by walking through the door. So I'm sorry for all the non-minority parents whose children are having this grandiose experience at East Lansing High School. It is not the same for everyone. It is very indicative of the America that we live in.
And to my surprise, a lot of the conversation still revolved around that tasing from 13 years ago.
And I will long remember when they came home from their different schools, each reading an article on their own about a student who was tased at East Lansing High School. And each of them, unfortunately, looking at their mother and saying, so a black kid got tased, right, Mom?
But the tasing incident, of which a few speakers have talked about, was not just a kid who, misbehaved a little bit and got tased.
The misinformation that is provided just in this small session, as it even relates to the tasing incident, is deplorable. If we don't have all of the facts, we should not speak to the facts.
And I took umbrage at that and said there was nothing in any of the reporting that indicated that. What would make you say that? And each of them individually said to me, Mom, I went to East Lansing High School. There's no way a white kid is going to be tased. To my knowledge, they were, and they remain, absolutely correct.
Finally, the school board shared their thoughts.
I think we can provide a more robust and comprehensive response by thinking beyond school resource officers, and we've been doing this. We have.
All of them agreeing that while having a relationship with the police was important, having a police officer stationed in the buildings would not add to the culture they were working to foster.
Could we spend the money and put an SRO back in our schools? Yes. And it would come at the expense of other programming that is preventing the violence that you are concerned about. I promise you, the things that these mental health professionals that we've hired over the last couple of years have been doing to support our kids have paid off 10 times. I don't want to take resources away from that when it's working so effectively. I want to put more resources into hiring more people like that If I knew sitting in this seat that if we put an SRO in the school, it would make you safe, I would do it in a minute, regardless of my personal feelings about it. If I felt like putting a metal detector in the school was going to make kids safe, done. I'll pay for it myself. I don't know how much they cost, but I'll pay for it myself, but it won't. And that is the futility of it. That is what is so overwhelmingly, it just drives me batty. I feel a real duty to hear people where they're coming from. And I really did hear where people were coming from around SROs. There could be a circumstance where I could get behind us hiring an SRO if I could understand, okay, what is the rationale for it? But a lot of times there isn't a rationale. It's people coming from a sense of fear and uncertainty. And I just want to feel safer in school. I understand that. Me too. But we're not going to make moves based on fear and uncertainty. We're going to make moves based on what makes sense. You're familiar with East Lansing, Emily. Our police station is very close to our high school. It's actually closer than a lot of the other schools are. So in terms of a police response, if something really were to happen, it's very likely that we can get someone to our high school from the police station faster than an SRO who is at the middle school or even at one of the elementary schools.
I thought back to the video of Marcus's tasing and just how quickly the police backup arrived. The East Lansing Police Department is right downtown, just a few blocks away from the high school.
That's why I'm very clear about saying I am not anti-police. I think a relationship with the police is incredibly important. We have at every opportunity made sure that they have access to our buildings. We make sure that there are tours, that they are familiar with the structures. I feel like my responsibility is to consider everything, SROs included, but we just cannot make knee-jerk reactions out of fear. And I also know that that's a risk, So I have to live with that. I have to go to bed every night knowing that I'm making a choice. Again, I will never make choices that make everybody happy. I have long since let that go. But I will always make the decisions that I know in my heart as a parent, as a professional, are the right things I know to do for kids.
And for Dr. Chambers, the post-pandemic rise in behavioral issues and violence is further proof that now is the right time to invest more in support systems.
I think it was hard to understand exactly what was happening at first because it was so not normal to what school was like before COVID. But as things structurally returned more normal, that is how we started to see these behavioral issues really are significantly different. I just was on a school visit a couple of weeks ago in a classroom, and a teacher made a comment about, I don't know what's going on with my kids. And I just had to take a moment and say, it's not just you, right? This is something we are all dealing with. And I told them, just Google East Lansing Public Schools. You'll see what I'm talking about. But it is really a challenge. But it shouldn't be surprising given how hard it has been for adults during this period. So that's another reason why we need to help them make the connection between how they're feeling and how they're acting and give them coping mechanisms. And I think that will also address some of the physical fighting issues that we have seen escalate in the last couple of years. I would love to say that is in the rearview mirror, but the reality is that we're still post-pandemic. So I expect that we'll still see issues in the classroom this year, but hopefully fewer. And with the lessons that we've learned from the last year, hopefully we'll be better equipped to address them.
As we sat in our office at Michigan State, all across campus, anxious freshmen and their parents were unloading their minivans and moving into dorms. The new school year was upon us.
As tough as this past year has been, and as many lessons as I have learned, I can't help but be optimistic. We just had a vacancy on the school board, and so someone who was considering putting their name in for consideration, they were like, is there anything you like about being on the school board? Is there anything good? And I just was like, actually, there is so much good about being on the school board. You wouldn't know it from how it's covered or how people talk about it. And yeah, that public part of it is kind of a downer, let's be honest. But when you're behind the scenes and you get to support all of the incredible work that our teachers have been doing, all of the curricular work, it's not sexy. It's not exciting for most people. Exciting for me, but most people don't get excited about this stuff. I get excited about this stuff. And so we're moving into another year where we'll be doing even more work around these issues.
In late August, East Lansing students showed up bright and early. Too early. I forgot that high school starts at 7:45 a.m. for the first day of school. They poured out of school buses or slammed car doors, shouting goodbyes to their parents and greeting friends.
I have a good feeling about this year. It's my senior year. I'm feeling great. I'm doing great. My clothes are cute. I got a haircut. I'm happy. Life is good.
Maggie and Kyra are starting their senior years, and Gabe is off to college. This year, he's a freshman all over again at Michigan State.
I'm excited to be in a new environment, get a little uncomfortable, because I think you grow as a person when you get uncomfortable. I'm excited to actually learn about things I'm passionate about, kind of just be my own person.
And for me, standing by the flagpoles with my microphone that morning, I realized that it was the first time I had stepped foot on school grounds since I was a teenager. My 10-year reunion had been canceled because of the pandemic. Maybe the month I'd spent here thinking about this community that raised me was, in a way, my private one-person high school reunion. I love back to school. Comparing class schedules with friends, deciding which notebook color is right for which subject. It's a fresh start, an obvious new chapter that you just don't get as easily in adulthood. The mistakes of the last year have been wiped clean, and the summer might just have given you enough time to find some renewed optimism.
Yes, it has its problems, but I still love it here. And I just hope that it gets better and that I can do my part before I leave to make it better. It sucks, but I was never going to get that little coming of age ABC show thing. That was never going to happen. I just kind of wish that we didn't have to deal with all this stuff. I wish that we could just be chilling. But that's not realistic for where we live. And I just hope that my sister, my cousins grow up. When I have kids, I hope that these aren't the same problems. I hope that we're not always fighting over rights and stuff like that all the time. I want us to enjoy being kids because I haven't had that in a really long time. And I want that back for the next ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Violence Week is produced and hosted by me, Emily Reeves. My sound engineer is Corey Choi, with assistance from Christian Cuccinello. Special thanks to Tony Williams, Feyisayo Aluko, Liam O'Brien, and Sierra Fitch. Fact-checking by Nancy Gordon. Our theme song was composed by Reagan Sprenkle. Violence Week is a Silver Podcast Network production. Thank you for listening.
It's too short but too long at the same time.